Hi, I'm Kalin, 8-figure startup founder. Today I'm gonna talk to you about why the self-help industry is so ineffective, why there are so many books, podcasts, and materials and courses, and there are billions of people reading and listening, but not a lot of real life change happening. For a long time, I didn't understand the reason, but after I went through a long self-help journey myself, with me being both the mentor and the recipient of the help, I realized that there is a single very important variable that the materials are missing, which is how to make the actual change more probable. To explain this, I'm gonna introduce you to a very interesting person. His name is Alexander Grothendieck. He is dubbed the Einstein of mathematics, a really high-level intellectual, perhaps the most influential mathematician of the 20th century. But it's not that he was just good. Alexander had a very unique approach to mathematics and, in a way, to life. He always looked at the existing structures and he always said, they're not good enough. I'm going to create my own structures. I'm going to create a better representation of reality, of the logic that's out there. My abstraction will be better. For him, the other mathematicians said that while they were trying to scale Mount Everest by exploring different climbing routes and getting higher and higher each time with small incremental progress, Grothendieck was instead working on inventing the aeroplane so he can parachute to the top. His approach was different and very generic, because once he invented that aeroplane, he could parachute not only on top of Mount Everest, but also on any other mountaintop in the world. So whenever he achieved success in mathematics, it always had broad implications in vastly different areas of mathematics, which was something in the 20th century when mathematics was already quite advanced, quite extraordinary. So how can we apply the Grothendieck approach to life, and why, and in which areas can we do it? The Grothendieck approach can be applied to areas with a clear structure, like not in messy areas like geopolitics, but our lives have a more or less clear structure. The economy has a more or less clear structure. So the Grothendieck approach can be applied to psychology as well, to see which are the cause relationships and what actually can we do to change our lives and the lives of our loved ones by making a small effort but pushing the right dominoes that pushes all of the other dominoes so that change can happen and last. Usually when the human brain encounters complexity, it really doesn't like it, because the brain has its very important job. Most important job is to preserve itself, to not go crazy, to not be too confused so as to stop functioning properly. So the brain has this very important function of simplifying everything to concepts that we can understand. It's very important to know that the brain doesn't care if these concepts are accurate or really helpful. It's most important for the brain not to be confused. That's why it's difficult to hold opposing viewpoints simultaneously to your brain, and other things that really prevent people from getting closer to reality and keeping them ignorant. Our brain really likes to simplify stuff in an unhelpful way. Grothendieck said that the idea of mathematics is not to make simple things complex, but to make complex things simple. But once you had the right structure, even if you had to invent it from scratch, then you could really start to see something in a simple way, and problems would become very easy to solve. The solutions will just fall from the sky, become self-evident, if you just have the right structure that represents reality as close to 100% as possible. If we try to apply the Grothendieck approach to self-help, to self-growth, we see that there's quite a simple equation about how we can grow, and we can see the components of it. If self-help was a mathematical function, what could we optimize for? There are just 5 variables in this. We'll call them A, B, C, D, and E. A is, will the person receiving the help actually understand the advice? How easy it is to understand. B is, if it's understood, how easy it will be to be followed. What are the chances to actually the real life step to happen? C is, how much benefit can it bring? Of course, this can be negative because the advice can be bad, and then instead of bringing value to our life, it reduces it. And D is, what is the long-term value, what we measure in our I Grow Younger as long-term freedom. What is our long-term benefit from doing this change in our lives? And E is, how likely it is for the positive change to stick, to remain in our lives. If we look at what happens with popular self-help literature and podcasts, is that people read or listen to something that is really smart and it's really applicable to their lives, but they either don't do it, no matter how times they hear or read about it from different sources, because they just somehow can't get themselves to do it. Or the other scenario is that they do it, but then the negative forces in their life just revert them to the status quo. And what can we optimize for between A, B, C, D, and E? Paradoxically, I think that the main problem is A, how understandable it is. Usually when we think of how understandable it is, we just think of in terms of words, language, clarity. Okay, if I tell you to start exercising tomorrow, didn't I just tell you everything that you have to do? You just need to go tomorrow, find some activity that is healthy to get your body going, and just do it. Is there anything more to it? But in reality, there is. It's A that is really what we can optimize for. Because if I just tell you to go exercise tomorrow, if you haven't done it in the last 5 years, what will happen? Nothing. You just keep on doing what you did yesterday, which was not exercise. In this case, you just need something specific to trigger this change, what I call a key. Now, everyone has their, let's say, locks, places where keys go in. Given that the brain is just a pretty emergent system of neurons, everyone has these locks. Like, everyone can be triggered with a very small trigger to make a very good change. Problem is, we don't know how it works. We don't know our own keys. We don't know our loved ones' keys. And even experienced therapists have a really, really hard time finding the keys for their patients so they can trigger positive change. What happens in reality is that we walk living our lives with this bag of locks. And from time to time, we put a key inside and just hope that it matches some locks and opens it. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. We can help each other by putting more keys in the bag. We can help each other by really just shaking the bag and making sure that all the keys try all potential locks just by more randomness. And this helps. But how can we be systematic about it? If Grothendieck wanted to optimize self-help as an equation, as he wanted to optimize mathematics, how would he do it? Verdict of this is that the problem is very often in language. If the concept that would solve our problem, that would trigger us to change positively, if this concept, this key, doesn't exist in our language, or the words that we would use to describe it have already a very different meaning in our society and would be loaded with emotions that would prevent the key from working. If these words are too complex, if these are words like work, which is just a huge concept jumbled into a single word, in this case, it will just not work. And we will have a very hard time finding our keys. The quality of the suggestions in self-help materials is good. What is missing is the proper language to describe it so that people can have a key in their lock, unlock it, get over their barriers, their fears, and the general stopping force of inertia, stopping change, of course. It's very important that we somehow overcome this obstacle. And just like Grothendieck very much like to redefine things in mathematics, or more likely define new things that people, his fellow mathematicians, initially thought were useless because they didn't see the value that the genius of Grothendieck saw in creating new structures. Just like that, we can create new structures in language. We can define new terms, and we have only one goal with this. The keys work when they touch our intuition. If they touch our intuition, then we understand and then we act. If the key doesn't touch our intuition, it's worthless. So it's very important to create an intuition about life. And this is the main role of I Grow Younger. We will not help you immediately solve your problems. We will not help you grow tomorrow. But what we can do is help you create an intuition, redefine concepts, define new concepts, and really make the framework of life simpler, more intuitive, using words that we all intuitively know what they are about. Words like love, fear, structure, chaos, time. All of these words, we instinctively know what they are about, unlike words like work. How do we go about creating this intuition? We need new words, we need new concepts, but another very important thing we need is to just get rid of all the noise. Forget about what society has taught us about work, about ourselves, about what it means to connect, to belong, to contribute, what society thinks about money, what society thinks about age, what society means about a lot of things. And when we get rid of these concepts, then we have the space in our head to really grow the new ones that will help us to improve our understanding of ourselves, the world, the passage of time, and really have real data points built on the right fundaments that will become a part of our intuition. And once our intuition develops, then everything in our life suddenly becomes understandable. Everything in the world becomes understandable. Everything in the lives of others becomes understandable. It doesn't mean that it instantly becomes good. Bad things will, of course, still happen. There will be tons of challenges, but at least we'll understand what's happening. We'll be better at accepting the things that we cannot change, and we'll be able to fight harder for the things that we can change. The path to progress is clear in principle, but it's very unclear in method. We need to first build our intuition, something that by definition we don't know exactly how it works, how it comes to conclusions. Then we need to learn to trust, listen to it, and then suddenly there will be massive progress. It may take months, even more likely years. In this time, we will not do anything that will hold us back. There are no bad side effects to this approach. You just start building the foundations in the right way while just keeping on living, even if it's the old way. Progress will eventually come, and it will come naturally, it will come without pressure, and it will come in such a way that it will solve many different problems at once. A lot of things come down to language. Language is very important. Do you know what chemistry is? Chemistry is just physics in a different language. It will be very hard to try to do chemistry if we were caring about the wave function of each electron separately and not trying to just make new concepts that really simplify and clarify the really messy, although known world of physics. So a better language can just define a new field. That's the power of language. It's extremely important to be able to redefine concepts in a way that they are understandable. I Grow Younger was started 3 years ago when I had a lot of personal experience, both good and bad, in trying to improve my life. I had a very long entrepreneurial journey, which at the beginning was successful. I was growing fast, then had a very long, unfortunate plateau where I kept failing every new project, and then I really took off with my startup, and this startup is now worth 8 figures. But not only it's worth 8 figures, it was built in a way that is not really typical of startups. There was just a very small investment that we later bought back, so there are no current investors. The startup is quite profitable in assets, and it didn't come at the expense of our well-being. I didn't have any burnouts. The employees have a large degree of freedom, and we try to take the best care of them as we can. Most importantly, the work we do is not annoying. There are separate annoying moments, but there's nothing in this work that we do, 110 people working in the startup, that is really bad for our emotions. We don't have phone support, and we don't do things just for the money. It has to bring money and not be annoying. So we try to make our transactions with clients easy and very clear, so the clients cannot complain, and so the clients have very rare occasions to ask for support. Usually it's just a very simple thing and not a lot can go wrong. We did this by aiming very high, and I have a wonderful team, but in the beginning, when it was just me 15 years ago, I had a lot of challenges to overcome, and although quite slow, and I cannot really brag about this because I achieved such a slow success that I'm not sure that it even can be called a success in this regard. But I really didn't have a lot of mentors, and I figured out my own ways of improving my psychology, both in terms of my life and my business. So I have a very, very deeply felt, very personal experience of self-growth. And I wanted to share it with the world. I wanted to help. I wanted to give back. So when I started 3 years ago, I wanted to give, but the problem was that everything that was correct about self-growth was already set. Everyone was just rehashing the same information in different ways. So how could I give value? And it turned out that the value would be in redefining son of language, to get new concepts, even if we didn't have a word for everything that's happening in our head. I needed this so many times that I just decided to create this phrase, and I called it the game of self. Even if we didn't have a category word of everything that was happening outside of our head, so in life, reality, I needed this so often that I decided to call it the game of life. And more concepts arrived like this. I needed a category word for every situation where we act based on love, energy, curiosity, desire to solve a problem, to do something, to advance. And there was no such accepted word for it, so I called it hunter mode. And the reverse situation where we don't act, where we are afraid, where we overthink, and when we do nothing, when fears and inertia get the better of us, I called it sheep mode. And I started defining these concepts just like Grothendieck would do, with the idea that with these structures that are like better reflect the most important building blocks of life, the ones that are really important in terms of change, when we want to change, when we want to improve. It's impossible without touching these basics. Everything is based on this. I started reframing a lot of those. I didn't find something that is worth pursuing in life if you don't feel a strong feeling of meaning or passion, which is the case for a lot of people nowadays, especially young they don't have a strong sense of purpose, but society tells them that they have to find it, and they have this pressure searching for their purpose, which only gets in the way, and that's the totally wrong way to do it. If you don't have purpose, it's fine, but still your life should have a direction. Like, without a direction, you're not going anywhere. I think that's pretty obvious. Direction is extremely important. You need to have some direction, some vision. But if you don't have a real passion in your life, what could your direction, your vision be? It should be to allow for better possible futures. Because after all, the moment of now is just the moment of now. There will be millions of moments in the future, just like this one now. And if you take care of the future, the best possible care, and if you do this in all of the now moments, then the future will be better. So what do we optimize for? We call it long-term freedom, which means just better and more options in the future. That's all it is, just more options. More options, not just tomorrow, but more options in 1 year, more options in 5 years, more options in 10 years. And when you look at these options, there are ways in which it doesn't really depend on us. For example, I was playing chess and I was almost a pro at 21. And chess was discovered, invented, however you like to look at it, in its modern form about 500 years ago. So if I was born in ancient Egypt, I would not be able to play chess because chess didn't exist. So my options would be less. Is it my fault? Not at all, because it's not up to me at which time and age and country I was born. There's a lot of long-term freedom that is not really in our hands at the moment, but we can always improve. And if we improve every day in a way that our long-term freedom is taken care of, then even if we are born in a very poor country with very low economic possibilities, even then there is a chance to get educated, there is a chance to become good at something, there is a chance to move to a country with more options. There's always a chance. Life is full of challenge, but also full of possibilities. So we optimize for long-term freedom if we don't have something better in our lives. Of course, if we are passionate about something and love it, then we just go after it with everything we have. But if we don't, it's not a problem. You just prepare for a better future, and preparing for a better future will give you more chances to find your big passion or your several small passions, or your big meaning in life, or your one meaning in your family and another in your job. Like, you'll find stuff. Just give yourself the space to do it. After defining all of these new words, new concepts, the resulting model had to be intuitive so as to grow your intuition, and it had to be broad so it can be applied to every human, or almost every human that is not its own really strange life situation. It had to work across cultures, across social classes, apply to men, women, like any identity that anyone could perceive for themselves. We really focus on what unites people. There are tons of things that divide people already. We live in the age where people are categorized based on all kinds of identity. And this may help in some ways, but surely doesn't help in others. And it's not really what our psychology needs to grow. Because identity is just something that is unchangeable, if you think about it this way. If you need change, if you need growth, you don't need identity, you don't need stories, you need a blank sheet. And then you can start writing your own stories, ones that are not copied from society. You can have your own identity, no matter how weird or crazy it is. And you can just start creating and leaving a good mark in this world. It's very important to understand how time works, but on an intuitive level. Because everyone knows how time works, but still everyone makes extremely irrational decisions regarding time. People will always prioritize the current moment. Things in the past will get just changed in their heads, and when we ruminate on past events, we create our own twisted, unrealistic version of them. And all of this is just jumbo into our heads. We tell ourselves all kinds of stories about the past, the present, and the future. We may get quite detached from reality because of our lack of understanding about how time works. To build this understanding, it's not easy. It's just a whole separate field of intuition, which I call time intuition. But if you stop looking in terms of snapshots, in terms of frozen moments in time, yes, snapshots are easier to analyze, but they are not the truth. A snapshot doesn't exist. It's called a flow. This is a very important part of the I Grow Younger philosophy. Without this, you cannot properly understand life. So it's very important to ditch this concept of snapshots. The present is kind of a snapshot. You should learn how to feel the present and the near future like they're one and the same, because the near future will be the present of tomorrow. If you have desire to get hammered, if you think that tomorrow you'll have a hangover, this will probably not stop you. But if you feel that tomorrow you'll have a hangover, if you feel tomorrow just as you feel today, you'll just not get hammered, and it will be a good decision. This is very important, the feel of the future, to feel life as a whole. And it's possible because humans have mirror neurons and they can feel other people. So why not be able to feel your future self? It's just a task that we are not used to doing, just to think about our future self, predict. The great intellectual gift of humans is the ability to predict. Use our intellectual part of the brain to predict, but also use our emotional part, the ones that has our self-knowledge, the feel, to feel the future, to feel how future us would feel in any situations. And then you will be able to improve your long-term freedom, because you will feel how future you will feel in certain future situations, and you will know what to avoid, and one of the most important abilities, what to say no to. And when you say no today, you don't get into this stupid situation tomorrow where you don't want to be, and which reduces your long-term freedom. So, if we had to describe the I Grow Younger philosophy, not in the way of what it doesn't contain, which is all of these stories and identities and things that divide us, and all of the things that we took from society, which are often just myths and lies, or things that were true in the past but are no longer true. If we remove all of this, if we actually grow younger, we get closer to kids with all their joy and curiosity, we get closer to the clean sheet. What do we actually put there? What is the foundation that will help us understand life? We have several key concepts. The least innovative of them is to separate everything into the game of self, what happens in our head, and the game of life, what happens in reality in the outside world. This is totally not new. It's practiced widely in all kinds of therapy. It's still very important because people know it, but then they forget it. And in some situation, they mess it up. Whenever you have a problem, you just ask yourself, is it a game of self problem? Is it a game of life problem? Is someone else reducing my long-term freedom? Someone else is really pushing me in the wrong direction, manipulating me, or maybe some system that humans build that doesn't really care about individual people is really encroaching on my long-term freedom. Am I just forced to do things that are really neither pleasant or useful for me and my future? Is it a game of life problem? Like, is something out of myself reducing my long-term freedom? Or is it the problem in me? If the problem is in me, I myself am reducing my freedom. I myself am making myself doing the wrong things, taking the wrong choices out of fear mostly, but also just out of lack of understanding, lack of self-knowledge, lack of self-love, lack of meaning in our lives, is the problem internal. And these two kinds of problems are solved very differently. If you understand reality better, then we can see what we can change and what we cannot change and adapt to this situation. Change the things we can, and if we can change too little, we can just abandon the whole situation. If we are at a university where we don't really learn useful stuff, you can just quit it. You can always abandon a system. And in this case, when you abandon the system that is not useful for you, you have many other choices that you can take in this place, and your long-term freedom increases. But sometimes the problem is in ourselves. In ourselves, objective reality doesn't really exist. It's what we think is true becomes true. The stories we tell ourselves, they come true. Identity that we assign ourselves becomes true. So in this case, if the problem is with us, we should really research how deep it is. If it's very deep, like if we had childhood trauma, it's better to search for therapy. But if it's just a repeating behavior that is detrimental to us and requires some more easy change, then we can also try ourselves. And in this trying ourselves is where the I Grow Younger philosophy really shines, because it's made to optimize for change. Anything else, it doesn't optimize for success in life. It doesn't optimize for feeling better. It optimizes for change. Change is the foundation of all these good things. If we change all the time, we will try so many things, get so many diverse experiences that sooner or later we'll have success. If we optimize for change, we'll try different things in our lives, learn which make us feel better, and in the end feel better and be happier. So change is the major hurdle, because humans are extremely bad at change. Inertia has kept us in line for so long that we change in literally one time in 10,000 times. Like 10,000 times we'll have the chance to change literally every minute of every day, and we'll do nothing. And once a month, sometimes once a year, sometimes once in 10 years, and sometimes never, will make a really good positive change about ourselves. When we optimize for change, the structure we are looking at is a bit different. So when is self-change possible? When is it possible to change without an external force, without help, without therapy, without mentors? Even with therapy or mentors, you still have to make the change yourself. They may give you a good nudge, but still you have to do the work. So how to make change possible? Change happens so hard that a lot of things must fall in line for it to be possible. And this is the most important sentence that describes your life about how change happens. Change happens only when you have the freedom to consider it, only when you have the environment to stimulate it, and only when you have the drive to pursue it against the constant force of inertia. That's what has to fall into place for change to actually happen. And that's why it happens very rarely, and it's generally hard. Here we have the key pieces of what makes change possible. I Grow Younger means ditching everything in your life that is not helpful in your head, all concepts that we copied from society, all of the myths, the lies, the truths that are no longer truths from the past. All of those, when you ditch them, you open space, you open yourself possibility for change. So that's one part. But then you have the environment to stimulate it. You need to change your environment for the better. Use your human intelligence not to change yourself, because you can't, but to change your environment, and then change will happen, because humans are very receptive to changes in the environment, very receptive to communication with other people. We copy our qualities from each other, we copy our stories, and if you have the right people around, if you have the right environment, then you will be able to change. But you also need the drive, just this raw energy to push you against the force of inertia. So you need the freedom, you need the environment, and then just you need to push. And when you push, just don't give up at any moment. Even if there is some positive movement, some changes, always try to go all the way. There is an amazing quote from one of the genius military men of all times, Julius Caesar. In his civil war against Pompey Magnus, he had a very bad day where just everything was against him. It was a chaotic battle. There were a lot of wooden walls, it was like a labyrinth. Caesar made a miscalculation. Also, one of his men deserted and told Pompey his plans. And in the end, his attack was a disaster. Hundreds of his soldiers were dead against almost no losses from the enemy. And even one of his running soldiers, after the disastrous attack, tried to kill Caesar with his spear in error, or maybe not. And Caesar was saved by his bodyguards. He had his own life in danger, and it was just a disaster. But what happened after the disaster? Pompey could have used his huge advantage by just attacking Caesar, who was battered and morale was at an all-time low in Caesar's army. But instead, Pompey just did nothing. Caesar withdrew, regrouped, and the parity in this war continued until the next battle, which Caesar won. And a few months later, after this error, Pompey fled to Egypt, where he was killed. From almost being the top person in Rome, after a few months, he was dead just because he didn't follow up. Caesar said about this moment profound words. He said, "The enemy would have won if they were commanded by a winner," which is a beautiful, really, explanation of what happened. Whenever you have a chance to win, you should really push the victory to the limit. With self-growth, we are trying to improve on ourselves, but there's always a lot of resistance. With this resistance, it's a 24/7 battle. It's not good to refer to yourselves as the enemy, but that's just the structure of it. You have this opposing force of inertia that's trying to stop all changes, and you just need to constantly push. And in the rare moments when you succeed, it's a very good feeling. It's easy to just relax and say, okay, I did it. I did something. I changed in some way. But these are the moments that are actually the most valuable, where inertia is weak because you already started to change. These are the moments where you should go all the way, not be like Pompey. Never be like Pompey. That's the moral. Or the upward trajectory will become a plateau, and then you can go down. Instead, you just need to keep pushing. So, how do we build our new concept of life? With the new words, the new core building blocks, the ones that really makes change possible. We'll give you the building blocks, but then you have to do the building yourself. But luckily, the building material is your own life. Once you have the good core concepts, you will be able to allocate every event and every thought and every emotion of your life into this framework. And when you do this, you will be able to build your intuition, to build your feel about your life, to see how you tick, to see how things happen. And then, just like in Grothendieck's mathematics, you'll be able to really solve problems effortlessly, because you will just see them for what they are. You will see the real structure. You won't be confused. You won't have this head in this fog anymore. And this is the goal. It will take time, but this is the only right way to do it, because it is the only way to really make it universal. Every other way is just fighting a symptom. Every other way is just incrementally trying to get to Mount Everest. But once you invade the aeroplane, all of the peaks will be yours. Once the good dominoes start to fall, once you have more joy in your life, real joy, real fun, once you will have more self-love, you will also be much more able to help others, to help your loved ones, because you will be turned outside of yourself. You will be turned outwards. And in this way, you will be giving the love, and you will care much more about giving than about receiving. And paradoxically, this is also how you will receive a lot, because there will be no more pressure about receiving, and people will just give you. There will be a lot more exchange going on, and it will be a very good exchange, a non-zero sum exchange between you and other people, because you will not be focused on yourself, you will be focused on helping others, and others will really appreciate this and return you the same. We already talked about how time was in the way of many things. And one of the ways that this happens is that people don't really understand the short term, the mid-term, and the long term the way they should, the way that reality happens in this time periods. We will have very strong focus in I Grow Younger in the very short term. We are talking seconds and minutes, but mostly seconds, because every change that you do in your life starts in a second, and if you don't do it in 10 seconds, the moment is gone. So not missing these moments is just of extremely high importance. It's very important to be in hunter mode so that we can snatch these moments and use them and just bring them to their full potential of change. So the very short term, the seconds and minutes, this is our how. How do we grow? How do we get better the next hour, the next day? The only way is to do the right thing now. If you do the right thing now for a whole day, now is just getting ahead and ahead in time, and the now is what really is in our power to do a tiny thing, but the thing that will help the next tiny thing, that will help the next tiny thing. For your biology, once you're in hunter mode, once that you're driven by love, energy, curiosity, once that you don't have a lot of fear, this leads to releasing the right hormones biologically, and then there's nothing impossible for you if it's actually possible. Like, you give 100% of anything in these moments. If you want in 1 hour to be in hunter mode and give 100%, the best thing that you can do is give 100% now. And then you give 100% after 1 minute, and then after 1 more minute, and then after 1 more minute, and eventually in 1 hour too. This is how it works. If you get consumed by fear or inertia, then what happens is that you do nothing now, and you do nothing in 1 minute, you do nothing in 1 minute, and then you do nothing tomorrow, and you just stop progressing. And humans need progress. When you stop progressing, you start feeling bad, and you may even eventually get a serious situation like a depression. Hunter mode is in ourselves, in our actions, and is our how. How do we choose our what? How do we choose what we do in life? Here's where we can be more rational, use our understanding of the world. It's very important to give yourself proper education, because it's your responsibility to get educated, not the world, not school, not university, not everyone else's. It's your responsibility. So if you get educated, if you start understanding the world, you will see where you can give value. But you should always not forget about money. It's a very important resource, because it can be turned into a lot of other resources. And if you have money, you have much better long-term freedom. In the midterm, you can optimize for your long-term freedom by having resources in the game of life, by having money, by having knowledge, and of course, by having intuition. The more you are in hunter mode in the short term, the more your life will be dynamic, and the more you have more data points for building this intuition in the midterm. And if you do the right things in the short term with hunter mode, and in the midterm with understanding yourself and the world and building intuition, you don't need to worry about the long term, because the long term will eventually come, but you would have already done all the right things. Planning for the long term is generally not needed, because if you have a lot of long-term freedom, you have all the good options to take. And of course, if you have some very big passion in your life, and pursue it wholeheartedly with most of your time, it doesn't reduce your long-term freedom. Because with this passion, you will be able to experience joy and fulfillment and emotions that are impossible for people that don't have this type of passion. So you just unlock a whole new world of possibilities. Really good things in life, like passion or having a family and kids, they cannot reduce your long-term freedom because they open a door to another universe of possibilities, another universe of possible emotions, and another universe of contributions that you can make to the world. Never be afraid to really chase your passion, create a family. That's not a problem. In any means, you just open new doors. But to be able to, you need the long-term freedom so you can make this choice. Because you have a family, but you don't have a job and you don't have any money. Instead of a joyful experience, it's going to be a very hard experience. If it requires a lot of effort, it's probably not the right thing. If it requires self-discipline, almost definitely not the right thing, because really good things, they just happen with no pressure. They just happen because we want them. They may be hard, the effort may exist in the process, but if we have doubts, if we have changes of heart, then it's probably not our thing. The real benefit of aiming high is that when we aim high, the things that we aim for are good for all possible reasons. They are joyful, they have good perspective, they help you, they help other people, and you should really not settle for less.